Hi, welcome back to the Launch Point Leader Podcast. My name's Lori.
And I'm Beau.
And we are so excited to be back here another week to share with you a story a listener has written in. If you here today and want to write into us as well to have your chance for your story to be read on the podcast, you can visit our website, launchpointleader.com/podcast, and we would love to hear your story.
For the chance.
For the chance.
Love it.
It
might not happen,
could happen,
but it might.
but it could.
Yeah.
It's like a lottery.
What
you
a
know?
chance
How
it is.
exciting. So our letter today says, Dear Launch Point, I used to love my work. It was exciting, fulfilling, and felt like something I was meant to do. But over the last year, that passion has turned into pressure. The expectations, both from others and myself, feel heavier than ever, and what once brought me energy now just drains me. There are projects and things on my to-do list that 2 years ago I wouldn't have thought twice about, and now they sit on my list and I put them off getting done. I don't want to lose the spark that made me so driven in the first place, but I also don't know how to separate my passion from the stress that comes with it. How can I find my way back to enjoying what I do without feeling like I have to carry the weight of it all? Looking forward to your thoughts. Passion paradox.
That's a great question, a great introduction for talking about this. I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is it's normal. Realize that the longer you're in something, the more you know about it.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't mean that what you once thought about it is no longer true. It just means you know more. I mean, think about marriage, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as an example, I love you, sweetie. But, the longer that you're in the marriage, it's like the more you know. And sometimes it's like, what are they doing right there, right? But I think with this regards to passion, I would ask a couple of questions. Has the job changed? Has anything in the job actually changed? Like the day-to-day, the activities. Has the vision or the leadership for the company changed? That's a little bit harder to solve and resolve for, but it's at least a place to ask the question. And the other one would be maybe not a question, but a statement. I think the thought of doing it is always worse than actually doing it.
Amen.
And I think I'm not suggesting that maybe the task that you're doing today doesn't actually take more from you emotionally and mentally than it did, years ago or months ago. But if our mindset is a little bit off with this one, we can turn a molehill into a mountain and do it really, really easily. And we can kind of cloud what the reality of everything is. The last thing I would say is get closer to the people that your work impacts. You came to that company with passion for a purpose. You were there for a reason other than just doing the tasks. Sometimes when we get too far in it, all of the daily tasks that we have just cloud what the mission of the business is. And so if you can get close to the level of people that your work actually impacts, it can help your mindset and perspective change on the work that you're doing because you're seeing the fruits of the labor. So, if you're in a corporate job and your job is to serve, multiple locations that serve customers, hand to hand, foot to foot, go and serve, go and work, go do somebody else's work for a few hours and see how what you're doing in your office is impacting the people that your company exists to impact. So there's some initial thoughts that I'd have.
Yeah, I think that's good. When I was reading,
I'm glad you think it's good.
I do,
It would be bad if you thought it was bad. I mean, it could make for a more interesting episode, though.
Maybe
potentially
some good dynamics.
We could fight.
We could we could really change the vibe of the podcast.
We could. I'll take my jacket off. Take yours. We'll go. Yeah, it's good.
But luckily, we don't have to get there because I think it's great advice.
Fantastic.
But when I was reading through, I think what this person is saying without actually saying it is they're experiencing a little bit of burnout.
Yeah.
Sounds like they're highly motivated, really care about what they do in the big picture, but we all go through these seasons where sometimes it's harder to access that passion and different things. And for me, when I went through similar situations, I think sometimes it's easy to blame work because it can have a lot of stressors in it and things like that, even if you love what you do. But it started to bleed into areas of my other life, and I realized that it wasn't the work. Maybe if I changed what I was doing, I think those things were still going to come out no matter what I ended up doing. And so I think for yourself, I think it's being really honest and saying, do I need to reach out for help in other capacities? Something that really helped me was getting connected with a therapist for the first time and just being able to talk it out and learn new ways and skills to deal with some of the things that I was feeling, because I at the time thought it was work and this was what was causing it. And, how did I manage that? And how do I change all these things? And nothing much needed to change at the end of the day. It was my perception and how I was dealing with it. So not saying that's the scenario, but
dealing
I think
with it.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that, because that was something that was coming to my mind too, is like, no matter what job you go and do or what your scenario is at home, there's always going to be things that are coming at you that you have to deal with and learn how to manage through. And it sounds like you're giving great examples there of how to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me too, like coming into this year was kind of at a burnout point as well on some things. And I remember having a conversation with my wife, and I said, I've got to get back to doing what I was doing when I was at my best.
Yeah.
Not when work was doing this or when these meetings were happening or when this was easier, but when I'm at my best.
Yeah.
What am I doing? And what was interesting? Like I made a list of 8 things. Of the 8 things, 1 had a direct relationship with work, or one was work related, if you will.
Yeah.
The other 7 were completely personal, physical, emotional, mental, things like having a coach, working out X number of times a week, doing so much reading every single day. Like it was just, but it's amazing if you actually commit to those things that make you your best.
Right.
It is kind of crazy how much everything else that you're dealing with work kind of goes back into perspective, and it becomes a little less of a big deal than maybe what it is right now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like that list of things that, what were you doing when you were personally at your best? When you felt your best, you were giving the best results, you were being the best version of yourself. And it's so easy to, it's almost this idea of when things start going really well, you stop doing those things because you're like, I made it. I did it. Yes. I don't have to do all these little things anymore. Well, and then you're surprised when it changes.
And you begin to think, because you drift. You don't just have a decision one day, I'm done with these things.
Yeah. Sometimes you start building these great habits for yourself, and you realize all of a sudden that things are going great, and you have this almost like placebo effect, thinking like, oh, well, things are good now. I don't need that anymore. And you can start dropping those things and walking away from it. And then you get back in a place where you realize you're missing those things that were so foundational.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, because you just drift towards getting away from the things that made you able to handle the responsibilities that you now have in the first place. That whole list that I was talking about, like I said, so many of them were more personal and making me right internally, mentally, physically, emotionally, to handle the responsibilities of the job itself. And as you drift into just the job, that job's always going to pull more from you than taking time for a workout, taking time for meditation, for reading, for a date night, whatever it might be that makes you ready for all that stuff. The busy is always going to be there, and it's always going to suck you in.
Yeah.
And so you've got to fight, especially when it's going well, you've got to fight to go, okay, what was it that made me great in the first place? And let me continue to do that and be disciplined with doing that. Because if I don't, I'm going to end up getting to a place where I'm not great for this role anymore, and this business and these people that have been entrusted to me. Yeah.
As you're talking about that, I really like the concept of drifting, because that is how it happens. You're drifting along, and all of a sudden you look back and you can't even see the place you were. You don't feel like the person you were 2 years ago. That's very clear, and it probably didn't happen overnight. And whether it's from burnout, if it is the job itself, if it's outside factors, things I think you've got to work with on that. I think those points you self, that's almost like your anchors that are going to keep you, if not exactly on point, close to the shore of where you need to be, of who you truly are and what's going to be best for you long term. And so I think it is making a list, and it doesn't have to be the 8 things, but what are those foundational, what are my anchors that I know make me the best version of myself? And I think that's the heart of what we've been talking about today at the end of it.
It is. I think for me, what I kind of take from this is like work on you first. Don't assume it's the job. We all know that the job is a lot, right? But every job worth doing is going to be a lot, especially in certain seasons. So work on you first. Figure that piece out. So that you're the best version of you to go attack what's happening in that job, in that position. when it comes to finding your passion again, I would just ask you, so I mentioned, has leadership changed? Has the vision changed potentially?
Mm-hmm.
And even if it has, the question I would go ask you though is, but what's your vision?
Yeah.
What's your passion? Why do you still do this? Why did you get involved in the first place? And can you create that vision and passion for yourself without somebody else having to manufacture it for you? And then get closer to the people that your work impacts, on a daily basis. What's the lowest level person, and not from a superiority standpoint, but where does your work end up impacting other people?
Yeah.
And go spend time with those people so that you remember all the worthiness that you're putting into your work actually is worthwhile in the outcomes of the lives of people.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty great summary,
Done.
You wrapped it up, you put a bow on it, and I think that's great. And passion paradox, I think, remember at the end of the day, you never say anywhere in this letter that you don't believe in the job. You don't even point necessarily to specific things that cause you to feel like it's not the right fit for you. Not to say maybe you're not feeling those things, but I think look on that. At the end of the day, even though you might be in a situation where you're experiencing a little bit of this burnout we talked about or just some difficult situations, it sounds like you've got that. And so take the time to really examine yourself and trust yourself to get back to where you can be at the end of the day. And I really appreciate your vulnerability. This is a hard thing to talk about sometimes. So just being able to write in and talk about it, hopefully this has brought you some new ideas and fresh excitement on what you can do to kind of work on yourself, and don't expect things to change overnight. You're not going to feel better 100% on Monday. If it's a Friday, you're not going to feel better just with one weekend. But if you start doing these things, you'll see results sooner rather than later.
Well, and you're going to feel better after listening to this podcast, just like everybody else does. So share it with your friends too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And your enemies as well. Share it with them as well.
That's right. Please send it to all.
Everybody.
Reply
just
all.
boom,
Forward.
send it all out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Done. That's it.
Thank you so much. Well, Passion Paradox, thank you for writing in and sharing with us. If you or someone out there has a similar issue that you want to write in and share about, or something completely different, we'd love to hear from you and just be able to give our advice and some actions that you're able to take on those. You can always visit our website, launchpointleader.com/podcast, and write us in on there. Thank you so much. Have a great week.
See ya.